from the email that was sent out is he's a professional writer and consultant, book author for almost 50 years. Been a consultant on projects for many, many companies, including Fortune 100 companies. He's taught media theory for over 10 years in an academic environment. He feels strongly that all adults should be aware of the distortion effects of different media and how they affect your perception of content, however subtly. But when I was doing a little research on you, Michael, out on the web, looking at a few things, I came across a quote that I think really describes you in terms of my experience of you in this mastery circle since I joined the group in January. And it was said by Haig Barrett, and they said something like this: if asked what his superpower would be, Michael remains philosophical, explaining, much like an artist works to create an image by identifying the negative space around an object to make that object appear, he would use his superpower to see the whole picture. He would most like a power that enables him to see the things that his clients are not looking at or paying attention to. It's this big picture thinking that gives Michael the power to create beauty and magic with every task he's given. Michael helps us seek and find the hidden path so that we can see our work in a different way that yields new and better results for our clients. And I'm convinced today, given things I've been reading about you, Michael, that you are going to help us to see things in a different way and give us a feeling of the big picture as you talk about the work of Marshall McLuhan. So anyway, welcome. Even though you're a longtime member of this group, it's my honor to introduce you this morning.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle. I wouldn't have expected someone to have gone that deep to look for that. But I will begin this presentation by saying that there was as happens in a career, there are strange connections that will create. I was in the consulting business for Xerox and IBM and given assignments to do product launch. And one of those was to do a product launch for Ventura Publisher, a desktop publishing program. And I became so proficient at it that I was out at the Writers Guild doing an evening, and I mentioned to the speaker after hours that I knew something about this program. And he said, oh, well, he said, you would have no problem getting a book contract in New York. Here's the agent who knows all about it. And the next Thursday, I had a book contract in New York. Now, this all sort of put me into a world where the next thing that happened from that was that I was recruited by UCLA Extension to teach interactive media. And interactive media based on desktop publishing and all these different things. That inaugurated a period where I taught media at UCLA Extension, created a fellowship for Paramount at USC Cinema TV. I taught at AFI, American Film Institute. I taught at Stanford for 20 years, media. So what you are hearing tonight, this afternoon, this morning, whatever, is about 20 years of working with media and working with students with media. And in the process of working with media, I came to understand media not just as anodyne, simple means of transfer of content. I came to understand media as extremely loaded issues which have their own risks and rewards, which we must be aware of if we're going to be creative artists. Slide one, Tim.
All right, here we go.
So new adventures of your smartphone, which is where we're going to end up. I decided to include a screen capture from an article on the New York Times, which cuts right to my theme. They literally wrote an article challenging Apple to the very core, that they recognize that the iPhone is, in effect, literally designed to be addictive. Now, we're going to get to this question because I want you to have a lot of time to talk about this. But the iPhone and other electric technologies are all addictive. All of them. And they all get you in certain ways. And we're going to talk about how they do and what you think about that. Next slide. In my classes, I taught Marshall McLuhan. Now, I don't know how many people here have heard of Marshall McLuhan. Anybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Marshall McLuhan. In this group, we talk a lot about Carl Jung, who is a visionary, a genius in so many ways. Marshall McLuhan was a media figure in the 20th century who may have had an impact on 20th and 21st century society equivalent to Carl Jung in an entirely different way. Marshall McLuhan invented media studies whole hog. No one else had ever thought of it before him. He basically said, we're going to discuss media as a force in and of itself. Forget about the content. Let's look at the medium. What is the medium? And he became famous for a phrase, the medium is the message. And what he meant by that was that the medium, basically, whether it's television or a broadsheet newspaper, creates basically a sensory effect. It creates a way of thinking. It creates a framework, an emotional relationship. And that emotional relationship that the medium creates frames the way you think. And the more you understand how the medium works, the more you understand how you yourself are affected and how the content you're reading in the medium shapes the content. Next slide. Now, these are all sample McLuhanisms. The medium are extension of our senses. They change, transform our environment, and affect everything they do. They reshape us. He was famed for saying the media work us over completely. Because again, they are the framework. They are the filter through which we see content. And therefore we don't, and oftentimes those of us who are not aware of media studies, media consciousness, do not see this. We do not even see that they are the filter, and therefore how they shape the content and what we see. He was also famous for saying things like, well, when you're on the phone or on the air or involved with television even, you have no body. You lose your consciousness of your body because you're so deeply involved in the content created by the media. Does this all make sense for a moment?
Yeah.
Okay, next slide. He was also famous for saying things just to get headlines. And this is one of the more famous ones. And he would just say things just to get people's goat in a way. But there was a certain truth to this in the 60s, is that art is anything you can get away with. And I think to a certain extent it is true. So go ahead. So I wish here. So at the core of what McLuhan was saying about media is that what he called the extensions of man is that each medium is an extension of one of the human senses or part of the body. The wheel is an extension of the foot. The book is an extension of the eye. Clothing, extension of the skin. The electric circuitry or any electric medium is an extension of the central nervous system, and by association, a direct line to the brain. Therefore, electric media like television, computer games, computers, and the iPhone are in effect electric narcotics. Nothing less. They are a direct pipeline into your brain, and they connect with you in a very intimate and powerful way. One of the more interesting of these, extensions of man, quote unquote, is numbers. And when I ask people, what do you think? Well, what are numbers? What do you think numbers really are? Where do they come from? What sense do they come from? It turns out that numbers are connected to the sense of touch, because our earliest sense of counting was fingers. And when we matured our sense of counting, it go to stones. And when you look at the ancient computer, it was the abacus. So actually numbers connect in this formulation to touch. Next one. So when McLuhan talked about television, he made a specific point. He said television is itself an addiction. We don't watch programs. We watch television. And he said people will sit down, and if they will just keep channel surfing until something least objectionable is found. It has nothing to do with the program. I'm going to sit and watch a program like I would go to a theater to see a specific play. They just sit and channel surf until they find something that's acceptable. And of course, the electric fire of television is consuming. If you have a room in your house where you can walk in behind a television receiver and see the electric fire on people's faces, you get a sense of just how powerful it is. Again, it goes to that sense of central nervous system. Television really connects deeply. And that's why it has the power that it does. Next slide. In the iPhone and in computers, now that we add the layer of participation to the layer of audience, we now add another layer of addiction. The other question I often ask people, which is an unfair question, but I ask it anyway, is who is the person who has the most visits to your Facebook page? And of course, the answer is almost always, well, it's me. Because nobody visits my Facebook page more often than I do. So that points up to the often not discussed fact that Facebook is really a mirroring technology, that it really is all about you gardening your Facebook page for other people to look at. But the point is here, people are sitting there completely divorced from one another, looking at themselves. Next page. So now we get to the point of addiction and the concept of the modern cyborg, the idea of a fused person-machine connection is now here. What a cyborg is a person whose physiological functioning is aided by or dependent on a mechanical or electronic device. Now, aside from all the campy 50s horror movies, the robot ringing around and everything, the first cyborg were the first patients who received pacemakers, because pacemakers were the first actual introduction of a human machine connection. And that was years and years ago. They were technically the first cyborgs. And actually, there are other medical applications that meet the definition. But with computers, a cyborg is really more of a psychological connection. Next. So now we have the original iPhone, launched in January 2007. You can see how simple it is. It's almost primitive. At the same year, Facebook debuted, and the two of them were a marriage made in hell because they created what I called an eternal ricochet. People had the iPhone and then they had Facebook, and people were constantly cross-checking their Facebook. I know people at that time who were checking their Facebook page, oh God, 20 times a day. It was that constant, oh my God, what happened on my Facebook page? Is it possible somebody posted something on my Facebook profile and I didn't see it? Oh my God. Oh my God. Can I imagine this? Is this possible? Anyway, next page. Now we add another layer to the drama, which is what I call the emotional character. When I studied dramatic character structure with Paul Gray at Rose Avenue in Santa Monica, one of the character types he mentioned is what are called the Mercutius character. Now, the Mercutius character is based on Mercutio from Romeo and Juliet, but what it really is, it is the archetype character for the friend, the spirit friend, who aids, typically like Sir John Falstaff in Henry V is another Mercutius. Disney has made an industry out of this kind of character. Virtually all of their animated shows have a character spirit friend like Sebastian the Crab and the Little Mermaid. They are all the same. The question is, could a mechanical device take the place of a spirit friend? Could it become your little mechanical buddy that answers all your requirements, that you go to for solutions, for warmth and fuzziness all the time? Now, this was actually, the iPhone makers may not have intended this, but many of the apps within it consciously tried to use some of this. So the Mercutius, or the spirit friend, the idea that your iPhone was your buddy, was consciously part of the marketing. Next. So as the iPhone progressed, we reach a fanatic level. And the fanatic level is a typology which is called nomophobia, or no mobile phobia. And this is a lot of extreme statistics, as you can see on the screen. The average smartphone user checks their device 80 times a day. Average time spent on smartphones is 2 hours, 15 minutes a day, blah, blah, blah. There's all these extreme statistics. What really is significant about this nomophobia idea, if you can take it to the next one, if you like, Tim, there's another one, is what happens if you lose your iPhone. And people will go into physical panic attacks where they may have to go to a hospital. They just go crazy. They just cannot physically deal with losing their iPhone, losing access, and require some sort of medical intervention, because the iPhone is so joined to them that not having it or losing it or not having it around could cause severe physical dislocation. Next. Now, the other aspect is what we will have to call flat out sort of part of the great universe in the iPhone of spyware and hidden advertisements. The iPhone is not benign. Advertisements are everywhere. They're hidden and they're looking to pop out anywhere within any of the applications. And there are significant issues with privacy, hacking, and advertisements everywhere. Next slide. The other area which I think most people I talk to about this subject is that many people will leave many apps on their iPhone and use only maybe 10% of them. while the other apps are sitting there and in many cases gathering data about them and selling that data on the open market. So one of the things that a lot of people could do for iPhone security, just delete all the unused apps that are sitting on your iPhone that you never use. Next. So here's a few statistics to wrap up. The number of people who have a mobile device, there's some figures here. If you look at number 6, 26% of car accidents are caused by smartphone usage. 31% of smartphone users never turn them off. And 45% of American children, 10 to 12, have smartphones. 82% of employees put their smartphones where they can see them all working. That's rather alarming. Final slide. Potential effects of smartphone addiction. And all of these are basically just aspects of depression, basically. Just anxiety, stress, depression, this kind of things. So I suppose I've given you enough depressing statistics here about smartphones. But at this point, you can turn the presentation off, Tim, and we can go back. And I have 20 minutes left in my time. I would like to open the floor to you to comment. If you have any comments about this or any thoughts, what your personal experience about what you think about smartphones and how you use them. If you think it's serious, if you think it's not, what do you, how do you react to this? Yes, Pamela.
Yeah, well, I was a professional photographer for 16 years in New York City and Hollywood. I don't have a voice right now. And photographing writers, artists, actors. And I had different cameras and I would be carrying a stand and lenses and all this kind of stuff. The weight was enormous. Now I got a iPhone 3 Pro, I think iPhone 11 Pro, and the Pro means it's very good. Anyway, so I take pictures and photographs from this phone, and now they have, 2 more editions of this phone. The photography is just spectacular. And it doesn't bother people. They don't even see you. You just hold it up a little bit, and just looked at and you take the sound off and you take pictures, and it just opens up a world. And then I send these images to friends and family and other things, wishing people happy birthday. For a photographer or some photographers, it is an incredible find. I'm finishing. I belong to a photography group in Paris. And in the beginning, the leader did not want anybody to have an iPhone taking pictures. Well, she stopped that within 3 weeks because she saw the results and the images that came from that. So it's just a thought, if you're going to get another iPhone, think also get a Pro, get the one that takes incredible photos. That's it for now. Thank you.
Has her hand up.
Yes. Who was that?
Sherlock has her hand up.
Sure.
And Thomas does too.
Yeah.
So you,
Sherlock, you have to unmute. There you go.
Yeah, I got it. I found this fascinating and also very true, and I'm really glad that you presented it. I find just an observation that it keeps increasing and increasing. People crossing streets, and they're always on their iPhone. Like, it almost makes me laugh, but it's not funny. And the whole thing on depression, I totally buy that. Everything that you said here, I'm like, yes, I have observed that myself. So this is quite fascinating. And I feel totally justified for not going on Facebook. I do not like it. I find it, if you like to be a person of conversation, get off your phone. But the thing on the cameras, beautiful. I actually love iPhones for the camera and the fact, but wow, this was fascinating. Thank you for bringing this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Whitney and who else? Somebody's going to have to help me answer all the hands.
Whitney, Afton, and Patricia.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And
Tim.
He's had his hand up too before, folks. I saw that before.
Right.
Thomas too, yeah.
I don't mean to be a downer about this, but it's scary that we have this love affair with our addiction of choice, this technology, and the addictive nature of it is very serious. And I mean, it's kind of like, well, is it like an alcoholic loving their alcohol, or cigarettes love, people loving their drugs? And recently, well, I live alone now for the first time ever, really. And my phone, I understand what the addiction is more than I ever have, because my eyes are burning. Sometimes my ears hurt just from watching videos or just reading the news on my phone, the tiny print and little videos or whatever. And I kind of am acknowledging that I have to step back and reevaluate how I am relating to media, or that it is sort of a problem. I don't know any answers to it because it's here to stay. And but then it kind of gets into, well, our whole way of life is addictive. Our whole Western culture is addictive. And we are addicts by nature, just being human beings.
I would say, Whitney, but before we go to the next people to answer, one of my big points about this is the nature of this oppressive technology is that it is stealing your identity.
Mm.
It is stealing and putting very oppressive sales models on you, and it's taking information and your privacy away. And you have to guard yourself from that. That's one of the main points I was trying to make. Who's next?
We had Thomas, and then we've got Afton and Patricia.
Okay, Thomas.
I really totally agree with you. I remember about 5-6 years ago, my sister said she got an iPhone and she's always crying she's going to be a bag lady, and they were like $500 then, and I said I'll never get one, and I have a Samsung, and I agree with the other speaker. Facebook I avoid like the plague, and I totally agree with you, Michael, that it steals our identity. And I'm not a computer person. I'd really like to learn from you, but I have a stepson-in-law, and he's just set up so that I can see email on my, I don't know, 56 or 58 inch TV, but I haven't done the mastery circle yet. But I totally agree with you, and I really appreciate the presentation that you have, because it is stealing our identity and stealing our time. And Facebook, I think, is just very difficult. So, amen.
Who's next? Tim, who's next?
That would be Afton and then Patricia.
And then
Afton.
Samuel.
I think it's a very complicated challenge that we have. I think it's incredibly powerful tool, but it has great enrichment to our lives. I think, like money, our children should have classes in management. I and I don't think my own grandsons don't have any phones, and the oldest one is 12, and they're quite fine. But I think at some point, one needs to be introduced and then supervised in how to use it. And we all need to figure out how to manage our own addictions. But it enriches my life incredibly, even making Zoom possible on the phone wherever I go. I can look up a word instantly. I can look up anything on Wikipedia right the minute that the question comes up, where I wouldn't bother if I didn't have it. It would be like that would just go by the wayside. So I have, and the camera, I'm going to get a 13 Pro because I understand the camera's even more phenomenal than the 12. So I'm all for controlled use of this incredible tool.
Okay. Who's next?
Patricia and Samuel.
I am.
Patricia.
No, Patricia. Patricia's next. I'm also very appreciative of all the great functions it has. I can be in contact with my family through WhatsApp or Zoom. In case of emergency, this cellular is incredible, practical. But I noticed that when I play Sudoku to keep my mind going, I notice that even if I have 3 mistakes, there will be a feedback saying, perfect, good job, done. And so then you want to work better, and then you don't have any mistakes. And again, you're a genius. So there is something, it does something, as you said, to your emotions. And that also, I became addicted to Sudoku. And also I started to play a Wordle app, so you can play as many games as you want, and you don't have to depend on the New York Times version, which is only 1 per day. And sometimes I doubt I got the right word according to them. Perhaps they tell me it's the right word, so I keep playing. I started to distrust. And then when the ads appear, I block the screen, noticing that I need to protect myself. Another way I protect myself, I do not go into Facebook in years because of the lack of privacy, and there is absolutely no point in wasting time in Facebook. But I can feel the pleasure of being recognized by the freaking phone,
Well,
which is dangerous.
when we have sometimes a dinner or a gathering, and 1/3 of the people around the table are on their iPhone, the way it disrupts social communications. This is something I've been involved in. So who else is next? Who's next?
We had Samuel and Bill.
Okay, Bill, and then Nita.
Well, Samuel was next, actually.
We have Samuel,
Thank you.
Bill, and then Nita.
Right.
First of all, I'd like to say we really don't have any privacy anymore. So the idea of protecting your privacy is a misnomer. And I would like to take the role of the contrarian or the devil's advocate. We've all heard of the mark of the beast in the Bible. Now, I'm not a Christian, but I think there's some truth happening here. We started with tattoos, then the culture got into implants, and we use our cell phones so much that I think as we go into using online monetary transactions and get rid of physical money, there's going to be a big push to make life easier and put the cell phone in your hand, arm, or brain. And it's going to be very convenient for people to have that. And it's going to be very tempting to do that. And the danger there is we can become cyborgs. And there's bioterrorism involved with the elites that are pulling the strings, like the New World Order, will have a lot of power over us. And our simple technology to help us have easier, more communication is going to turn us into being slaves of the system. And I think we have to be on guard for that and really guard what we choose to put our energy in, because it's right around the corner, the way it's been going. Hate to be the bad news bearer, but someone's got to say something.
Okay. Bill? Bill?
Yes, thank you, Michael. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I missed a lot of what you said because we had a plumbing emergency I had to deal with. Anyway, so you may have answered this, but I don't know. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say it's just there's the convenience. Just so that's the other side of the coin for me. But then I feel, I feel just kind of some wariness. It's like I've got an iPhone and I've got Apple Pay, so I don't need a credit card. I can just walk into the coffee shop and just hold it up to, but this is a weird one. This is the latest. It's a 13, and the way it recognizes it, I have to look at it and it recognizes my face. And that's kind of spooky in itself. And then it recognizes that it's me, boom, and then I can make the payment and do it like that. So it's convenient, but it's also spooky at the same time. I'm aware of that. The other thing is, I had a question for you, a quick question, Michael, because you were talking about how we see something on TV and it's more about the TV experience than it is the content. How would you contrast watching the same movie, a feature film, in the theater versus watching on TV? And forgive me if you already answered that, I wasn't here.
Well, in the sense that what you go to the theater for a purpose to see a film, and you make an event out of it. Television is a stream of content. I didn't go through the full television thing, but McLuhan talks about TV as just basically a bunch of segments. And, if you think about all the interruptions when you're watching a movie at home, the dog comes in the room, you've got this and that, somebody says, oh, I'm making popcorn, and you're doing this and that. So if you look at the way you watch the movie at home, it's just a series of interruptions. It's a series of this and that and the other thing, and somebody comes in and somebody comes that. And so you make what the process of watching TV is a series of stitching together components from what happens in your life, and you make a show out of it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I don't want to take too much time, but thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So but the issue with the iPhone more specifically, I think, is that the more controlling it gets, I think is a good example. Something like Amazon is training us to be passive shoppers in a certain way, and the degree to which it's getting more and more aggressive about wanting us to shop in a particular way and how it wants us to shop, how it wants us to buy the annual Amazon, discount, and how it wants this to happen and this to happen. And this is an example, I think, of how progressively the various vendors want the audience to be trained to behave in a particular way. And this is sort of unprecedented. So any others? I think we have Nita's next.
Nita, yeah. Unmute, Nita, yeah.
I did. Takes a second. Well, Pamela spoke from the photographer's point of view, and I'd like to speak from the artist's point of view. As a designer, I'll never forget that I read something recently and said the industry that was most affected by computers was the graphic design industry. And I went from doing paste up to doing everything on the computer. I really resist change, and yet I try to jump into it as much as possible. And in terms of what's going on, we are a certain generation in this virtual room, and the younger generation is creating the world they want. And it may be difficult for us. And we can see, oh my God, what are those kids doing? I mean, they're just screwing everything up, but they are doing what they are doing, and they will be dealing with that world. And then they'll talk about the next generation the same way. And I have to say, I'm going to stand up for Facebook, because anybody that knows me knows I love Facebook. I have a community of creative people, artists, writers. I talk to all these people. I see Facebook as a small mini art gallery, and it's a forum, and it's private. I don't have people popping in and out. It's only a group of people that I approve, and I enjoy it. But then, everybody to their own. You don't have to turn
Exactly.
it on.
If it works for you, that's the greatest thing. Exactly. Anybody else? Oh, I have to. Boy.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on Nita and along the themes. I'm gonna stand up for a lot of these things, including, Michael, movie watching on TV. For me, my movie watching time is sacred. Nobody's going to interrupt it. I'm going to have no intermissions, and I get to set that. I don't have popcorn around me. I don't have people yakking around me, and I actually make it a more sacrosanct experience than going in the theater. So, and I have the Criterion channel, which has incredible old films, independent films. It's a community in and of itself. So it's a matter of how you use these powerful things. And like Nita, I'm in several closed Facebook groups, several Jungian, one in with my Dressing Your Essence lady, and several, one dog one Saluki one. They're closed. You have to go through a process to be accepted, and they make a wonderful community. And a third point is, if my 100-year-old grandmother, who was living alone, had had this available to her, she would not have been in the depression she was during the last few years of her life, suffering with, she probably died of loneliness at 100. So that's what I have to say.
Whitney.
Right. I think I misspoke, getting all fearful about addiction, but because the world is transformed because of this technology, medically, research, social media, the list goes on, and balance of how we use it, or how it uses us, and how it uses us is something we always have to be wary of. And I have choice, I believe, and like many of us said, I think we use it as intelligently as we can, and it has so improved so many lives. I just read about how Pakistani and Indian families that were divided for years and years have been reunited because of Facebook. And I bet all of us have stories of how we've been reunited with people that we lost touch with. I have, even relatives, just like little miracles because of Facebook. And so there's all, there's this tremendous upside of it, and then the downside. But which the fear to me is, as Samuel is saying, I do want to piggyback on that I think he's right, that the kind of the drug of convenience, and that and how money's going to change, and like as you were saying, Amazon wanting us to be certain kinds of shoppers, and that so there is sort of a huge manipulation, and there is a lot to be wary of. So like maybe like anything else in life, but there is just so much positive stuff about how technology's changed our lives, or this medium. It's not just social media, really, is it? It's all the technology of.
Yeah, it is. It is all the interconnected technology, and it is all the, I think the thing that we all have to be wary of is that all of this stuff is very intimate technology. It affects us very closely. And so we need to be wary about that because it touches on issues of privacy. And as beneficial as some of it is, we have to be mindful that it's becoming more and more and more closer. And you just have to keep your eyes open.
Michael, thank you so much. I think this, from the conversation and from the comments of people, is something that could be an extended conversation and needs to be. And so I want to thank you for bringing this to us and for the comments that people have made and the concerns and also the pluses about technology. And I think this is an incredible topic. So again, thank you so much for bringing it.
Thank you to everybody.
And many thanks for having done so.
I know this topic is very atypical for our usual.
Yeah.
But we'll see, I just thought it would be interesting.
Michael, I think though there is a spiritual dimension to it. I think that as spiritual beings, we need to be conscious and aware of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I do think that you've helped to open our eyes to that today. So thank you so much.